Hey, welcome back to Veterans Beyond the Wire podcast. I'm your host, Tim Keller. Along with me is my co-host, Matt Disher. And we have a fantastic guest this week, Mr. Andrei Wood. He is a Navy vet and is now looking to transition into that civilian professional world. So it's kind of a new lane for us. So Matt, I'll let you kind of introduce the thought pattern here, and as well, how was your Thanksgiving, sir?
You know, it was a very strange Thanksgiving. I think that probably most people could say the same thing. I did get the opportunity to put up all the Christmas decorations, and I also made a YouTube video. So I have a young budding YouTube channel that my son and I put together to just start classifying vacations and things like that. And so we made a funny video. That YouTube channel is called Dish Fam. So I've only got like 5 videos on there right now and maybe 11 subscribers. So
is that where the golf video is?
No, the golf video is actually inside of my own YouTube channel because it wasn't family oriented.
Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, it was a good time. And yeah, Thanksgiving was strange, but still got to see some family just at a distance. And it wasn't the usual hanging out at somebody's house for the entire Thanksgiving, watching football and drinking wine and things like that. But it was good. How about you guys?
Andrei.
It was uneventful. It was uneventful. I mean, we kind of the same thing with the social distancing. You can't really expect that there's going to be the bigger gatherings of late. So I kind of just stayed in, had a small thing going, and you know we'll have a bigger get together in 2021. It'll be hindsight. It'll be 2020. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, normally we have a very large gathering, probably around 30 people most years. This year it was just my household, and then my in-laws came over. So very small considering what we normally go through. This year, all I did was help stir some of the cranberries for the cranberry sauce as they were warming on the stove.
It's an important job.
But you know what? If I touch anything while a meal's being made, I then take claim of the entire meal. I stirred those. My wife was all over it. She's awesome. She's great in the kitchen. But I stirred those cranberries. I then cook Thanksgiving dinner. I take care of the whole thing. I didn't touch a turkey. I didn't mash no potatoes. I didn't make no corn. I made the meal though, just by a couple little stirs.
You know, in our house, if you make the dinner, the other person cleans up, or the other people that didn't make the dinner clean up. So in that case, you could probably say, hey, I stirred these cranberries. I'm going to go sit down and drink coffee while you guys clean up after your wife made all the other dishes, right?
Yeah, let me know when you guys are done. I'm coming in for dessert then.
really incentivize people to jump in.
Right. Clean up this kitchen. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got Andrei on today. You know, I think for those listening, for the people that we have that are on here every week listening, you know, Tim and I put this podcast together as a way to begin a network with or a dialogue with our fellow veterans, people who have served in the military, and to give us an opportunity to share some information and maybe help that community as well. Some of the conversations we've had have been around job seeking, have been around what the next steps are, what it looks like to get out of the military, and what struggles we face in that realm. And of course, some of our guests have talked about that too. We've had great people on the show like Sean Washington, Dave Shantz, Bart Cole, Dave Simons, just to name a few. Chris Newsom from Recruit Military. Just a lot of people talking about great things, great experiences they've had in the military, or dire experiences they've had in the military, and how they've translated that to what happens after the armed forces. And I think we, along these lines, as we're trying to decide who we are as a podcast, who we are as a group, I think that, you know, something that came up was that we are best serving the veteran community if we're also including those who are looking for opportunities. And I think that part of the conversation today is really what we're going to call a post-COVID job seeking world. A year ago, it was a job seekers market. Anybody had any job they wanted. Employers were dying for talent, and it has flip-flopped. And so you find a lot of people right now with really great experiences and talents, looking for jobs, looking for their next opportunity, and banging on doors, and even sometimes kicking doors open that are empty behind them. So I think that's really where we're aiming to go with this from here on out, is to have a few guests on here that are, you know, exceptional job seekers, people with an interesting military background, with an interesting story, and we can maybe create a little bit of a megaphone. I think it's our responsibility, having a little bit of the handful of followers that are looking at this podcast every week. I think it's our social and moral responsibility. So with that, let's hop into the news, Tim, and then we'll get to Andrei here in a minute. But that's the quick brief on what we're doing with a job seeker with another great guest this week.
Well, I have two articles I pulled up today because one's just never enough. But the first one's kind of a feel good story. The Coast Guard Seaman Caitlin Kilroy was over in Greenland. She was in the capital city of Greenland. I'm going to probably mess up the pronunciation of this, but Nuuk, maybe Nuuk.
Sounds right to me.
Yeah.
But she was eating alone in a diner, and she noticed an older gentleman also eating alone in this diner. So this young lady decided, hey, my upbringing has always been to pay it forward, to always help others. And for whatever reason, this young lady thought this person was a great candidate for this paying it forward. So she decided she was going to pay for that gentleman's meal. It just so happened that gentleman was the premier of Greenland, essentially the president of Greenland. So the premier, Kim Kielsen, was eating alone in a diner, went to pay his bill or her bill. I don't know. No, his bill, and realized that some young lady across the diner had already paid for his bill. This now has sent a chain of events that has led to this young lady being awarded some sort of medal, some international caregiving medal. I didn't know there was such a thing, but she's won a medal for buying someone their dinner while eating in a diner in Greenland. I thought that was just one of those things that shows just continue to be a good human, no matter where you're at in life. You're in a diner by yourself in Greenland during the holidays, and it's a small little act. It probably cost her a couple bucks, and now she's got this medal that not too many people, I'm sure, have been awarded.
This reminds me of the time just a few years ago that I was eating in a small diner in Greenland and Barack Obama was there and I bought him. No, I'm just kidding. Could you imagine though? It's so weird though. It's such a strange thing that in some of these other countries that this guy was just sitting in this diner by himself and it was not apparent that he is the president or the premier of this country.
Yeah.
There's no bodyguards,
security,
there's no fanfare,
people.
right? Yeah. And so this opportunity was able to arise. But on your point of being a great person, I was in a Subway yesterday, unrelated story, but being good people. In a Subway yesterday, I have a bunch of cash in my pocket because I recently sold some furniture, some patio furniture on Facebook Marketplace. So we're getting some new stuff. And this guy gave me $1,000 in cash, all $50 bills. And so I'm carrying around a $50 bill in my pocket and I'm getting my drink at Subway and I dropped the $50 bill on the ground. And this guy covered in paint and has all of his painting attire on and he's covered in dirt, comes up behind me. He's like, hey man, you dropped $50 on the ground. Very easily could have grabbed it, picked it up and walked out. And so he let me know that that I dropped it out of my pocket. But yeah, good folks out there. I just can't imagine bumping into, oh, hey, look, it's Donald Trump at McDonald's. Can I buy your hamburger?
If I ran into the premier of Greenland, though, I couldn't tell you. We'd have no clue.
Right.
So,
I think it's unique to some countries like United States, Great Britain, a handful of others, some of the big powers in the world. I think it's unique to us that, again, it's fanfare around our politicians. They are these really important people you see on TV every day, all day. And I'm sure somebody from that country would probably recognize that gentleman, but perhaps not an American inside of one of their restaurants.
Well, you would, like you said, no sort of security, nothing around him. He's by himself in a diner. That's right. It's pretty amazing.
Right.
The second one I brought up here it speaks about the bonds we form with our brothers and sisters while in the armed forces, and how when you speak to veterans, so many times in the conversation it comes up, I miss my friends, I miss my brothers, I miss my sisters, because those relationships you form in those high stress, you can't not lose type situations are so hard to come by. And this article talks a little bit about how to bond with your civilian counterparts. And I thought this was a good topic, especially for this show. So it talks about how your civilian counterparts come from so many different backgrounds, and it asks you to just make yourself approachable. Don't be that. Matt's talked about it when he first got out. He had that 1,000-yard stare. He'd go into interviews and be like, "Hey, I can take apart machine guns, and I can shoot from 500 yards." That stuff doesn't work in the civilian world.
Those are important skills. Just that nobody out here cares.
It's true. They are important skills in a very small slice of life. And when you enter the civilian sector, that slice gets even smaller.
In very particular environments.
So it talks about adding warmth to your calls and your emails. Instead of just being extremely succinct and direct, it says personalize your communications. Say, hey, good morning. How was your day? How was your family? You ask these open-ended questions. It gets people feeling good. It allows them to look at you as more human than an employee or a counterpart at work. And it helps build the relationships. It softens them up a little bit. It also talks about just when you're at the water cooler or in the break room or you're, outside the office, start by asking open-ended questions. We all know that people love to talk about themselves. So we're all sitting here together. Hey, Andrei, how's mom and dad doing? Boom. That starts, Andrei's probably going to go for 2-3 minutes on mom and dad. After that, be like, hey, that's great to hear. Hope everything's going well. Can't wait to talk to you later. And then just leave it at that. And Andrei's going to be left feeling, hey, man, that guy's pretty cool. He actually cares. And that allows you also to then receive some of those open-ended questions and for that civilian to then start to understand the veteran side of you and be like, oh, okay, I understand why he looks at things this way. And he is looking for strong, deep, bonded relationships. But I think those are some very big key things that a lot of veterans, I know myself especially, early on was tough. Like, I was like, you guys just don't get it. Oh.
Tim, you were talking in a drill instructor voice back then. You're going to an interview like,
you listen here, you scumbag.
You're all equally worthless.
Yeah, this is what we're going to do.
Wait. I think Andrei is a case in point here. I interview, let's call it thousands of people in a month, maybe hundreds of people in a month. And they're not always interviews. They're just conversations that I have with people. And Andrei and I can talk about this here in a second. But I meet lots of great people who are transitioning out of the military or who have transitioned out of the military. And there are the conversations where it's yes or no questions and answers where I say, so, what do you want to do next? And the answer is, I don't know. There's really nothing I can do with that. We have to have a conversation. And generally the next step from a recruiter standpoint, the next step is for me to identify an opportunity for you and to look around the business and kind of figure out what comes next. But then I have to present you to a hiring manager, and that hiring manager has to make a decision on you too. And when there is no dialogue, when there is no personality coming through, it's very hard. You have to sell yourself. I can't sell you all the way. I can sell you 50%. If you can't sell yourself the other 50%, there's not much I can do for you as a recruiter. And when I say me, I'm talking about the entirety of talent acquisition in almost every company in America. That's just the way it works. We're looking for, especially in leadership positions, we're looking for people who have maybe a little bit of charisma. You don't have to be, you don't have to be singing show tunes or anything, but it is a little bit of charisma, a little bit of personality, and that has to come through in a conversation. So, Andrei, I don't know, you and I have had how many conversations now? We've been connecting, and I've been looking at opportunities around our business. I'm going to make some introductions to Andrei, and that's why he's here today. Really, is to get cast a wider net. But Andrei and I have great conversations, and I was like, geez, I just need to have you on the podcast, and you can be one of our guests. So. It's right along there with how we go in and sell ourselves.
Well, I wanted to start off by saying, if you're just listening to the audio portion, I can guarantee you Andrei is our best dressed guest. He holds that award. He's got the championship title locked down. He's got the suit. He's got the tie, which, by the way, perfect knot on his tie.
Thank you.
That is a skill not too many people have. So thank you very much for coming on the show, Andrei. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well.
Great.
I
do have one more question I want to get to before we get into the professional side of things. That picture behind you, did you take that, or is that something purchased?
No, it's a canvas.
Okay. I just say if you took that picture, that's a beautiful photo.
Oh,
I
wish.
I thought it was
wish.
a window. He's in Florida, so I thought that
Yeah,
was
it's that beach life. So.
right.
I was gonna say if his home is literally that close to the water, he's probably just a touch too close.
Right.
Real estate.
Maybe too close.
Yeah. So Andre, you are a Navy veteran. Let's talk a little bit about that. Where are you from originally, and how'd you end up in the Navy?
So it's a crazy story. It's a lot of rocks and bumps along the way. I actually didn't start in the United States. My beginnings have always been kind of an interesting story in that I was born in St. Petersburg, Russia. Spent a few years in an orphanage, just kind of thinking, hey, something will come of this. And parents came across the pond and adopted me, and a sister brought us back to the United States, and we grew up just like any other American family with kids would grow up. And I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that distance, but I get a different perspective of what it's like to be from Eastern Europe, especially growing up being a kind of a historian of sorts in a hobby sense, really trying to learn the past of this country, the past of countries around us, from a U.S. perspective as well as from that perspective. So that was kind of interesting in that it didn't end up starting the way it starts for so many more of us. I was probably the only person in my class, who was from that other countries, that other country and getting that outside perspective. So that was interesting. So I spent a lot of time learning about the United States and Russia, kind of the value system and the politics, and that's kind of what got me into politics and kind of this idea that we have negative rights here that no other country has. And we have those things that we fight to protect, and we've for the long history of the Navy and the Marine Corps and the other branches, we've fought to protect those rights, and those aren't rights that countries like Russia have. Those aren't rights that a lot of other countries who would be considered developed countries have either. And while they have militaries to defend those kinds of protections at home, I think we're unique in that sense. So having learned about that, I think the straight takeaway was that I spent a lot of time growing up learning about the military and learning about the assets. And, as a kid, you're always so excited to learn about that kind of Bravo and Charlie knowledge that we always discuss. But for the listeners and the viewers, I mean, that's a lot of the, the specifics on military tech and stuff like that. But it's just interesting as a kid. And growing up, I think that interest kind of evolved into protecting the rights and being into constitutional law and protecting the first 10 in the Bill of Rights specifically, and kind of how that manifested. So that's just a quick intro into how the military kind of became a thing for me. So
how old were you when you ended up in the United States?
3.5.
3.5. Okay.
So very, very young.
Right. Well, that's cool. I mean, I didn't know that, and that's awesome. That's I think it's interesting that you have a very unique background in terms of your starting point. I've always called the military the great equalizer. No matter where you come from or no matter where you've been, you can join the military and you get a different perspective and a different state of mind, and it sets you up for different successes, moving forward in your life. So
absolutely,
it's awesome.
I look at humans as layered cakes, and that's just one more layer to your cake. That being born in a place like Russia, and then your story of being able to come here and get brought up in this country, and then your love of history, all that sort of stuff. That's just other layers to your cake. You have more layers than some people do. By 3.5, you already had that extra layer on everybody else that was here.
Yep.
So you're in the Navy. What'd you do for the United States Navy?
So I kind of start before the story about what I did. I ended up in flight school, but that wasn't always the hope and the dream. Getting out of grad school, focusing on the 3-letter agencies, I really wanted to do something in DC. And if it wasn't in DC, I kind of had my mind set on working for defense, working for security in some fashion. And the Intel thing, I guess that was just a billet that I was a little late on. It was a January decision for that billet, and we didn't spend a lot of time on the prep for that and some of the things that I could have done to kind of add to the portfolio success for a January Intel billet. A little bit before that, I had a buddy who was in the nuclear program. He was doing the NUPOC school, and he was up in New York for his year of prototype. And his dad said, hey, his longtime friend of I think at this point 18 or 19 years actually. His dad said, you ought to try this. I mean, you've always been good at math and science. You've always been good at these kinds of hard skills, and you got your 90, 97 or 98 on the ASVAB just like he did. You might as well give it a shot. So I passed the multiple tests for the nuclear program and was accepted into that initially, and found out through, I guess, a few weeks and a few months of waiting that the nuke shop wasn't keen on giving a clearance to somebody who was Russian born at the time. As with many things in the military, you start to learn those early lessons about, hey, this is just going to be that thing. I'm not going to be able to change their mind. That's totally okay. So we moved on. I took the OAR ASTB, which is the aviation side of that officer's aptitude rating test, and decided to put my best foot forward in learning that, no matter what it was. I hadn't seen aviation or anything like that since college. Actually, I took a college elective on aviation and really enjoyed it. But looking back, I think I realized how much more specific that field is, and how much more I enjoy it with the details that I know now. So I took that rating test and scored. I think I scored 7s and 8s on it out of 9. So not as good as I could have, but for having not seen that stuff, most of that stuff ever, I think I did okay. So my recruiter at the time said, "Hey, I can get you a NFO billet, and I can get you to OCS by August." And this had been just after the January Intel billet. So I think we were in February, March at this point. And I said, "Hey, anything to get the process started. Let's do it." Because I'd been waiting for a while at that point. The year prior, almost that entire year prior, and that summer prior, after I graduated from grad school in 2016, was spent on the personal side, focusing on the election, obviously in 2016, and then really making sure that nuclear program was a possibility for me. But that being said, the NFO thing ended up working out for getting to OCS in August of 2017, and in October of 2017, I scrolled and went straight to Pensacola in January for flight training. So
that's awesome. Well, that's another layered road to get to flight school. For me, it's I watched Top Gun, and I was like, man, I want to do that. And, that's how I would have got to flight school personally, but also not nearly smart enough to do that. So you scored 7s and 8s out of 9s out of 2s and 3s at best. And they'd be like, yeah, you can't get in a plane. You're going to just destroy this millions of dollars of equipment.
Right.
It'll be fun though.
You have insurance, right?
So you ended up in Pensacola, Florida. How long were you down there doing the flight school?
I did flight school, I guess it was till April of this year. And I actually I ended up deciding through the process. I think it was the grad school that did it for me. Ended up deciding and realizing that this isn't what I want it to be. Maybe not what I want to get out of it. I think I graduated grad school and had that push for those agency jobs, and the DoD having spoken to me and flew 2 people out to St. Louis at the time for the discussions about a job that they were interested in having me on for. And I got through OCS, and you get all of the leadership training, and you get a lot of hard decisions. You talk to a lot of people that have made these kinds of decisions in their positions, and you're really thinking, okay, I'm a almost late 20s at that point, late 20 something individual who's really motivated, really driven, has been in these kinds of situations before in graduate school, because they bring you those military leaders, they bring you these individuals, Condoleezza Rice, General George Casey, special representatives from the United Nations, both in New York and in Geneva. Geneva is a story we'll get to later. I've ended up working, studying, and living there. So that was incredible. But they bring you these experiences through all of these people, because they know in grad school that you can't quite do that on your own, and you aren't quite going to get to DC, walk up those steps, and like you said earlier, be able to see some of these politicians and maybe even sit down with the premier. Who knows? They give you those opportunities to prepare you for situations like that in the military or the civilian world, wherever you go. And I think when I got to OCS, they doubled down on the kind of leadership expectations and the leadership training in part. But I think I was a little more ready than some of my classmates were. Some of them in their late teens, and most of them in their young 20s, many of whom had just turned 21 or 22. And I think I was more ready to make some of those impacts. And I got into flight school, and I was excelling at the content itself. And I think I just realized that the the chances to make those impacts weren't going to be what I thought they were. And I think I realized, I want something in the civilian world that ends up giving me that chance. I was ready to do that, I think, before I joined training. And I think I was ready to do that in grad school as well. So, but I think I needed the experience. I think that's the part that I really want to focus on, is that it is something, especially with what you led with, Tim. It's something that really, really, really brings everybody together. It is the great equalizer. It forces everyone to realize there is one standard, and you don't have to meet that standard. You can go home at OCS. There were plenty who did, and you can decide to find the will within yourself to continue and push on. And you can see what's next. You and your teammates and your classmates almost first, teammates as you go along and you grow and you build together, because it's the same thing. Whether it's living by the gouge and dying by the gouge. You're succeeding as a team or you're failing as a team. And your leadership was always there to let you know, class team or otherwise. I mean, this was more than just our class team that we always interacted with on a daily basis, and they were always there to let you know, you need to remember your beginnings, and you need to remember that all of you started here, and not one of you is going to be better than the other, and not one of you is going to succeed while the rest of you fail or while the rest of you flounder. And we'll bring those people down to size to remind them where they started, and that all of you come up together. So I needed that.
About as far as team building goes, I don't know of another organization that does it as good as the military does. They take anybody. You could have you'd have a kid from Beverly Hills and a kid from the backwoods in Kentucky, two completely different lives. Once they get into the military, they are absolutely equal.
Yep.
And they all start as individuals. They all start as a class, as you put. And then as the process goes on, they begin to gel as a team. And as far as team building goes, absolutely top notch when it comes to the military. But Andrei, I got to commend you for having the insight and the ability to read yourself and realize that, okay, I went into this, I wanted to see what this could provide for me. And, as you continued on in the process, you realize, hey, this probably isn't right at this point. And what I truly want to do, this isn't going to set me up to do. And you had the ability and the willpower to say, hey, listen, I'm going to step back from this and I'm going to try to transition. I'm going to take a different path. And so many people aren't willing to make that jump. They're like, well, this is kind of the road I'm going down. I'll just stick with it and see where it goes.
Right.
So I commend you for that.
Thank you.
I think about my own.
That's a hard thing to do and a hard decision to make.
Absolutely is.
I think about my own time in the military. And I'm probably like many others too. Maybe a little bit different of a path, but it was. I think when I went in, I'm like, I'm going to do 4 years and get out. I'm going to do this time and get out. I never intended to stay. Now, I know a lot of people also say, I never intended to stay, and then they end up staying for 25 or 30 years.
But hopefully they chose legacy retirement.
Right. And I talked to a lot of, like I said, I talk to a lot of people on a daily basis who did an entire career in the military, and I commend them. And they are, in many cases, they have the world at their fingertips. For me, it was, my family legacy was everybody in my family, my grandfather, my dad, my older brother, everybody did 4 years in the military. Nobody was a careerist, but no less we wanted to do our time. We wanted to spend some time in the military and get that experience. And it's just something that I had to put, into the toolbox, so to speak. But Andrei, you said something about, the team rises and falls together. I mean, that is, I was initially thinking about, that sounds really familiar. Because it is, it's uniform across the military, across all of the branches of the armed forces. But that's week one in Parris Island in boot camp in the Marine Corps. It is like, we're going to shave your head. Everybody gets to wear these silly shoes, and you're all going to be equally confused. You can't refer to yourself as your name. You're no longer I. It is this recruit, or not even we. It's not first person. It's all, everything is third person. And they do that to make sure that that you're not an individual anymore. You're a member of a team now. And so it's a very unique. It is. That's where the equalization starts. As Tim mentioned, people from different places. I knew kids that came from wealthy families. I knew kids that came from very poor families, and I see a lot of them on the backside of the military right now, very successful. Not everybody is, but I see a lot of people who probably otherwise wouldn't have had opportunities. and they are business owners, and they are supervisors and managers and executives in some cases, with all these opportunities at their fingertips, simply because they put on the uniform for a few years and got that experience. So it is the great equalizer.
Absolutely.
So you talked about checking out some of those alphabet agencies. There's a few hundred of them. We can just start listing off the alphabet, really. Was there one in particular you felt fond for, you were looking to get in with?
The DoD, just in its general sense of ability to look at this, I think we had a family connection who was making some rounds in some of that field of work, and said, we have this thing for assistant to the Undersecretary of Defense. It would be like an admin level type beginner stepping stone job, and you'd get into this and you'd move on. And they flew people out. We had discussions, and they came back to me that October, to talk about next steps. And I, at that point, I'd already gone in at the initial step with the nuclear program and sworn into the Navy. And the first thing I thought was, you raised your right hand, you took this oath, you did all of this work, you're standing behind something now. What does it mean to move away from that? How could you now tell somebody so flippantly, so almost so lightly, no, it's okay, even though I have committed to this, and almost backing away from that? Kind of, what would that mean to do that so early? And I don't know whether that would have led to the formal interview, or what that would have led to another group of people flying out for a kind of a second or a third look. But I said, no, I appreciate it. I've sworn into the military. I'm going to do this. And I think even that is telling, that first feeling that I got, which was, you have this now. You don't know what it is, but it matters. And that oath means something. Dedication. And I didn't even realize, because remember, I hadn't been through any training yet. I didn't even realize anything other than that word, almost those words themselves that made up that oath, and create everything that underlies it. And for each branch, because we learned a lot about your guys' oath and everybody else's values, core values and everything like that. And I just kind of that feeling of, this means something, and I want to see where that goes. Even if, like you said, Tim, that insight to realize later and have to make that decision, could come along. You know what I mean?
But in that moment, I mean, you showed true dedication, despite the fact you haven't been trained. And the reality is, at that point, they haven't really invested anything into you. So the Navy would have been okay with allowing you to go, and you're still serving the country in a different capacity. But they hadn't invested anything. It's no loss. It's just at that point, another name on paper. They would have been losing. But that shows true dedication. You would raise your hand, you had taken an oath, and in that moment you thought that meant something. If to no one else, it meant something to you, and you're going to stand by your word. And you did, and you went through the training, and then you made your ultimate decision. So where are we at now? What are we looking for? What are we looking to do?
So I was talking to Matt about this, and like he said, he's referenced to 8, 9, or 10 calls at this point, Matt, that have been
a handful,
all positive, all longer conversations than I'm sure we've both been able to squeeze in on some occasions. But I mean, that's a great thing, and obviously I'm very appreciative of the two of you for having me on today, if I haven't already said that, and Matt for the phone calls, and just the ability to like we've kind of discussed, to really work for people in that capacity, and really be the I guess the guiding switchboard, if you will, for thousands, and probably tens of thousands, given the viewers and the listeners, over the course of what you guys have been doing here, names and jobs and opportunities. So I really appreciate that. But I mean, I think the general goal for me is to try to make those impacts, right? I referenced earlier about feeling like through grad school and some of the opportunities that they outlined for us and allowed us to take chances for, and they don't provide these opportunities to everyone, mind you. A lot of these were competitive opportunities. The internship in Geneva, Switzerland was a chance to both get a job. They don't provide you one. Once you got accepted to the program was really just this ability to take classes for your graduate degree in another graduate institution across the world. And they set that up, but they didn't set up the job. They said, okay, well, you have to come here and you're expected to get an internship for 6 months. You better do it, make it happen, type of thing. So I did that. I liaised with a non-governmental organization, another one of those 3-letter agencies. In this case, it was a 4-letter agency in Switzerland, and worked with them for a while. But that is to say that, and we can get into that later, I'm sure. That is to say that I'm really looking to make some of those impacts, whether it's building up to leadership or leadership, obviously, down the road. I think I'm ready to make some of those decisions, and grad school and obviously OCS, as that great equalizer. I think grad school tends to build you up, especially at a place like the Corbell School in Denver. It's one of those top schools for international studies, international relations, and they do their best to try to get you that feeling of you're ready for those 3-letter agencies. Go do it. And I think I needed OCS because I needed to remind myself, and I needed some of that military training to remind myself, no, this is a great equalizer, and you need to remind yourself, never forget where you come from, and never forget that you started in the same place a lot of these people started, and to always remember that you're still working towards something. You are a learner every single day. I strive to be a career learner. I'm not somebody who thinks that I've learned past tense, whatever it is. I want to continuously be learning, because you can always learn more. You can be a pro at something and still be learning something every single day. And you guys have your own perspectives. You're 2 more people with 2 more perspectives that go way down the road of things that I have to learn about. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I look at it. Is I've got to get that perspective too, and really, like you said, Tim, at the beginning, reach out and ask those open-ended questions and get to know people, and try to learn those perspectives, so that I can move forward, with leadership roles in the future, to best lead teams. Because the best way that I would say is to lead those teams successfully. You have to know the teams, you have to know the people, and you have to be willing to accept feedback from those people and say, look, I'm still learning. Even as your boss, even as your mentor, even as, you empirical you, whoever you end up being, I'm still learning. It's still a lifelong process. And I'm available to both, be ready to make those decisions as well as be ready to continue learning. So that's
fantastic.
How I put it.
And you brought something up that the past few days I've been thinking about something. ABC, always be curious. Always asking the questions, because you mentioned you're on a podcast here with us two. We have 2 different viewpoints that you could learn from. I'm on a podcast with you two. I could learn something from your guys' viewpoints, and the same thing for Matt. And no matter what situation you find yourself in, there's other people around you. And by asking the questions, you're going to learn things. And never stop learning. Never think you have it all figured out, because guess what? You don't.
Yep.
I've always heard that the moment you think you know everything, you know nothing. You're the person who now knows nothing, because if you are so caught up in the idea that you think you know everything, then you might be the dumbest person in the room, because you're not learning, you're not keeping an open mind, and you're not experiencing. You haven't had all the experiences, and that's the learning is not just opening books and reading them. It's not like opening a history book and saying, now I know everything about American history. Learning is experiences. It is new technologies. It's other people's perspectives. It's listening. I think, Andrei, I think you nailed this on the head without really saying it. I talk about this a lot, that corporate America is dying for leaders. And I don't mean managers. I don't mean, like, there's a difference between the 2 words. Managers manage processes. You don't have to be, and let me rephrase this, because I have to make sure that I'm not going to hurt anybody's feelings. The title manager in a business is a title manager. Generally, what that means is that you are a person leading processes or people. But the word manager in its true form is managing processes or people. It's not necessarily leading. It's not synonymous with leadership. And I think that corporate America is dying for leaders, for true leaders, people who understand that you have to get to know your people in order to lead them. Leadership is not coming in and saying, hey, you got to be here on time, and now we got to make 100 widgets today, and then we're going to go home and take your lunch break and you only get a half an hour. That's not leadership. Leadership is getting the most out of your team. Leadership is getting to know your people and motivating them to do the best work possible, even in some cases when they don't want to. Or leadership is breaking down barriers that your team might face. That is true leadership, and probably what a real manager in a process does, is somebody who looks around and says, we're operating at 80% efficiency. How do we get 100% efficiency and still keep people happy so they want to come back to work? We talk about, in business, we talk about turnover, and we talk about inefficiencies, and we talk about absenteeism, and people don't want to come to work and they call in sick, and et cetera, et cetera. And it's probably a unique time to identify these with COVID, and we could talk about that in a minute. With COVID, so many people are working from home, so who knows what you're getting out of some people. I know some companies that have just flat out fired their people. Just flat out fired them because it's like, well, we can't keep our eyes on them, so let's just get rid of them. I mean, geez, talk about. I mean, that's it's like
it's cold.
It's different. It's different if you're gonna get rid of the talent because you simply cannot utilize them right now. Like, that's a business decision for the bottom line. I understand that it's not always pretty, but that's business. Mm-hmm. But I'm talking about these businesses that are like, well, we can't micromanage our people right now because they have to work from home. We can't have them in the office, so let's just boot them.
And that's an example of
it's almost like a sign of lack of trust in their base,
it's
right?
poor leadership. They don't trust the fact that they have these people that they can then trust in order to do the jobs that they need to do from an outside position.
But if you have good leadership in your organization and your leaders are properly equipped with leadership traits and leadership skills, and this is what I say again, not everybody from the military is an exceptional leader, but I think the military does produce some of the best leaders on earth. You got to think about this. Think about what we're doing in the military as leaders. We are asking, and I'm going to use the pop culture version of this. We're asking young men and women to charge a machine gun nest. We're asking young men and women to stand on a tarmac in 130-degree weather in the middle of the desert and operate aircraft that are operating at 500, 600, 800 degrees. You're asking them to do this for 24 hours a day. You're asking them to take. I think I calculated at one point in time when I was deployed. At one point in time, probably as an E3. In the Marine Corps, that I was making like $1.13 an hour. Mm-hmm. If I took all the work, maybe it was $2.13 an hour. Yeah. Granted, this was back in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
I was doing exceptionally hard work, not getting a whole lot of sleep. I was freezing cold, sometimes almost hypothermic. Doing this, it was amazing stuff. Now that I look back on it, it's like the stuff you see in the movies and video games. But it was $2.13 an hour. And one of the reasons that I was motivated to do that was because of my brothers and sisters alongside of me, the guys like Bart Cole, who we had on the podcast a few weeks ago on 9/11. Guys like that kept me going. My leaders, the people that were leading me, were exceptional leaders, and it was because I was just motivated to be by their side. And if you could apply that same logic to business, to corporate America, you're not looking for managers, you're looking for leaders, and the military produces the best. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox. I just wanted to make sure that we were saying that.
No, Matt, you made a great point there. It's when you're in those teams and you have a leader that lets you know, listen, I am not special. I am no better than you. And look at what I'm doing. Look at what Bob's doing. Look at what Tom's doing. If we can do this, you can do this. And it's the same thing in the business world. If you can find that leader or be that leader that can instruct and show the other individuals, listen, we are not any one of us is better than the other. And look what we all can do. There's no reason someone like you can't do it as well. Come along for this ride. Let's all win together. And that's in my opinion, the leader. It's the ability to not stand up on to use Matt's word here, a soapbox and say, this is what you will do. This is what we need to do. This is what we all can do. Right. I can do it. You can do it. We all can do it. Let's all go together.
Right.
That, in my opinion, is what a leader is. Andrei, you brought up Geneva a couple times now.
Yeah.
You were doing some grad school over there. You had an internship. Did you actually get to enjoy Geneva at all?
I did.
Okay, good. So that would have been rough to have been there for 6 months and not actually. I stopped at a coffee shop a couple times on my way to class.
I can't even tell you how, and I'll try to be brief with it on the entertainment side and talk about some of the work experiences and the team experiences. But oh my gosh, did I enjoy it! Geneva is one of those magical cities that you see and you look at and you're going, oh my gosh, this city of wonderfulness on a lake. And this massive fountain that was just this pipe accident when they first were building the plumbing for the city, and they rerouted the piping for the water for the city as they expanded farther out across the lake and around the lake, and they left this site essentially of a pipe accident as a pipe burst, and that fountain still exists today as just a sign of kind of the picturesque nature of Geneva and the nature of it all and the water. Because that's really they're that city on the lake. But the internship itself, I just go straight into that, was a really, really great opportunity to work with a kind of a multicultural and multinational team. My boss was from Portugal. The person working for him that was also working on my team was from Greece. And myself, being the only native English speaker, it was very apparent very early that they needed somebody from day one. We're talking first hour. As they were handing me these policy program books and these manuals and all this documentation, because obviously you've got to get up to speed on what the projects are, what the company's done, what the company's doing. I worked on the police integrity program for the Geneva Center for the Democratic Control of Armed Forces. That's a really long acronym for DCAF. And our basic goal was, as a neutral country, Switzerland's basic goal for these initiatives was to take countries in the southeast of Europe, primarily in the Balkans, and take their initiatives, take their requests for help with their police integrity programs, help with their corruption, help with some of those on the ground issues, and fix them and try to help them. And we couldn't solicit them for anything. We couldn't go to them for anything at all because of Switzerland's position in the world. So it was incumbent upon us to make sure that we'd received their request. We'd make sure we'd understood it to the absolute fullest extent. Because if you come back with a policy or a program or a prescription to a country that hasn't quite asked that, it almost looks like you, the country, are trying to add something else. And maybe in another situation, that's possible. But again, in Switzerland, you cannot do that. So it kind of really made important to me, number one, the importance and details that mattered surrounding those policy initiatives and getting them right. And right out of first year of grad school, getting the chance to be one of 10 people out of 300 or 400 applicants who was awarded this opportunity to go and to get an internship and study, take classes where the primary language in the room was French, and really have to struggle there again as probably being one of the only native English speakers in the room in both of those cases, really having to buckle down and learn advanced microeconomics with the chair, then Secretariat of the WTO, Bob Koopman. Being somebody who's quite learned in economics now, I think it was a great honor to be able to be in a room with somebody like that and just listen to that expertise and get that perspective. Again, we've spent a lot of this time in this call talking about perspectives, so I'm kind of bringing that back, but that's really what it was. It was just being in awe for the first 20 minutes of this genius on the world stage of economics, and a lot of people. I took classes in law. I took some resource law classes, and really got another perspective, which is what I was there for. And it'd been the first time I'd been back to Europe since coming to the United States, so it was pretty interesting. But it really kind of gave me that perspective and really reminded me, like, you did a lot of simulations. Lots of military leaders came to the grad school to prepare simulations for us and get these kind of war games going. So coming across, to Europe and really getting a chance to work with a real team, doing real initiatives, and just office job, from hour one. It's funny because I told them I was prepared to work on a Thursday, and they said, "Are you sure you can? Your plane landed yesterday. You can come to work on a Monday." And I said, "No. I'm a hard charger. I'm ready to go. Let's do this." And I spent the first few hours of that day at the desk going like this, reading over hundreds of pages. Yep. Because it was 3 a.m. and I'm at the desk, at 8 or 9 in the morning their time, just trying to get caught up.
Right.
But it taught me a lot about what needs to happen and how quick some of that stuff can happen, and that the transition is often not one that really affords you much time. And that's the expectation. That was certainly what what had been instilled in me and what the graduate school education instilled, which was, you're going to jump into these and they're moving. They're not going to slow down for you as you jump in. And in some cases, there's a bit of a transition period and some of that ability to let you kind of fall into things and get there. But at the same time, you got to come in knowing, hey, they're moving. That wheel is spinning, and I got to find a way to jump on, hold on, and stay moving with them. So,
absolutely, yeah, that had to be rough. That time transition. You're showing up at an office at what your body's telling you is 3 a.m. and you're saying, why the hell are we not in bed right now?
Right.
When I was younger, I could do that kind of stuff. Today, I would be like, nope, you're right. I'll start on Monday.
Yep. Right. And I look back at that and I'm like, why did I think that I had to be that guy that came in on a Thursday morning?
You wanted to impress him. I mean, I get it. I still do that kind of stuff. When I show up to a meeting, I'm like, no, it's fine. I'll get off the airplane. I'll come into a meeting, and it's sometimes you're like, man, I wish I had another like half an hour to prepare.
He's still got his neck pillow on.
Right. Neck pillow and yeah. My
he's got The eye shades are just pulled up on the forehead a little bit.
Yep.
Oh, God.
He's in a video call like this, and they're pointing to him. They're going, "It's on."
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well,
Oh,
so Andrei, you and I have, again, we've had a bunch of conversations, and you and I have tried to identify different opportunities around where I work in my business. And I think that this is again, the opportunity to be on the podcast is kind of acting as a megaphone as well. We're going to share this to the different places where we broadcast, but then also put this on LinkedIn and put a link to your LinkedIn profile as well as a job seeker. This is another topic here is just job seeking during COVID. It's, as we mentioned up front, it's a different time right now. And I think that is, I don't think we need to reiterate it and beat a dead horse necessarily, but I realize that it's a hard time right now for somebody with your background to be looking around for a job. And that's really for anybody. So you're an open door right now. You're an open book, so to speak, in terms of where you want to go and what you want to do. You're just looking for an opportunity to plug into an organization. Do you want to talk about what's ideal to you? Like what kinds of roles are ideal to you?
Yeah. So I think what's ideal to me is something, a company, work environment, a firm that appreciates the chance for people who really want to make an impact to get to start making those impacts. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna feel like you make an impact every single day or every single week or even an impact once a month type of thing. But really that chance to connect with the team, start to work. Like I said a little earlier with Geneva. That wheel's spinning. I want to jump in. I want to hold on and I want to move at the pace of that firm, that company, and kind of get a sense of that company culture with the leaders and the team that they have going, and really get to know them. Like we talked about earlier, really get to know the people on the team, the leadership, because that's eventually the goal, right? Is to be able to jump into that sphere and make some of those impacts, make some of those decisions, and get to know those kinds of teams. And you're going to have, all kinds of people, which is why I think the multinational, multicultural experience is so valuable, because there was a language barrier right away. The people doing tech support on the computer, we're speaking French, that kind of thing. The boss and his boss, both people who did not speak English as a primary language, and in fact had a native language that was so far and above different from this one. But yeah, it's just kind of that company culture that appreciates the teamwork, appreciates adding those people together and really kind of saying, hey, what can we get accomplished? What kind of impact can we all make? And as we made those points with those leaders, good leaders build up their team, build good teams, working for those leaders who are building them up, and it's kind of just this circle of one working for the other to help the other. So that's kind of where I'm headed. I know that's more of a company culture answer than a firm answer for the future, but I hope that answers some of it.
Right. Well, I mean, I think in the beginning we talked about the ability to get on a phone and have a conversation with somebody who's an intelligent conversation. I think that you answered a big part of that question is who are you and what are you looking for? And so that can be, I've always said this about any job. You learn a lot of the jobs that people take. You learn a lot of that job on the job, particularly those mid-level management leadership types of roles. There's some specialization that comes along with a lot of roles. Example, like commercial real estate, property management. You can't just come in off the street and do that kind of job. It takes a little bit of experience, but let's talk about operations jobs and things like that, logistics jobs and things like that, where you're managing a team of logistics people or a team of office people or something along those lines. Let's just assume that your experience, your professional experience and your military experience is 85% of what you need to go work in that job effectively. The other 15% is something you're going to learn on the job anyway. So I think for a lot of employers, they're just looking for somebody with a semblance of an idea of what they can bring to the table, and somebody who's moldable. The ability to learn is invaluable. And that's something we talk about. We were talking before about people who spend an entirety of a lifetime in the military. I have heard, and I have not experienced this so much in my own career, but I have heard from a lot of employers, a lot of hiring managers before. They're like, it's really hard to take the 30-year military veteran and plug them into a new operation because they are set in their ways. And I say, my answer to that is that anybody with 30 years of experience is probably set in their ways.
Yeah.
But no less, they still have 90% of what you need to come do this job. So I think it gives you a little bit of a platform to, what you just did was an elevator pitch, and it's a great opportunity for people to see who you are, and without even committing to jumping on the phone with you, they just watched you on the screen.
Right.
Well, I'll say this, and I was listening to a podcast the other day, the great Dave Chappelle and great Joe Rogan, and they mentioned about the other guy that was on the show was talking about reading recipe cards when he was a child and realizing I don't have any of these ingredients in my home. And then as he got older and started to earn money, he goes, well, now I can afford these ingredients. I'm going to go buy these ingredients. I'm going to try these out. And they were asking how he became such a good cook and a chef and things like that. It's a statement for human development as well. Andrei, I think you've done all your shopping or a lot of your shopping. You've acquired so many ingredients. You now need to find a place that has a lot of those, that corporate ethos that you're looking for to essentially give you that recipe. And you have the ingredients. You need somewhere to give you the opportunity, let you step in the kitchen, and you can start to become this top-notch chef that I honestly believe with your background, with your schooling, with your travel across the world, seeing so many different perspectives, I think there's great things on the horizon for you, and hopefully you find what you're looking for, because I think with all the ingredients you've got, you're going to make one hell of a meal.
I really appreciate that.
So
that's the second reference that Tim's made to humans being layer cakes and now delicious meals.
I didn't have breakfast
He's
this
bringing the
morning.
food.
I'm
He's
really
bringing the
hungry.
I just wanted some cake earlier. Now we're talking
I'm
about
gonna get over here and go make some eggs and grits, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
But I Tim, I agree with you. I think you put it eloquently. I think that companies would be to their advantage to pick up somebody like Andrei.
Mm-hmm.
And I said it before, companies are dying for strong leaders. Whether they realize it or not, every company I've ever worked for needs strong leaders. They just need them. And there are some that are developed and there are some that you can pick up off the street, so to speak. But, strong leadership skills and experiences, that's the other thing that you just can't beat from hiring somebody right out of college. Somebody who has worldly knowledge. That's something that I've always spoken about. Somebody who is cultured, but also those of us who have spent time in the military, we're cultured. We work among people from all different cultures. You can't beat that experience. That's experience you can't teach in a classroom. So 100% on board.
I believe Jeff Hancher says leadership's caught, not bought. It's something that,
right.
You got to go find, and it's through experience, and the military gives that step up for almost everybody. That even if you don't think you're learning it, I guarantee you're learning it while you're spending time in the military.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So, you're hiring a veteran on. Guess what? They might not even see it themselves, but deep down, deep seated, is that seed of leadership, and you just have to bring it in, give it a little love, and it's going to start to blossom for you right in front of your own face, and it'll surprise even sometimes that individual. So, Andrei, I got to say, you are an exceptional individual. This was a fantastic conversation. Hopefully this helps you on your journey, that somebody sees this, hears this, and begins to reach out to you. Because I truly believe, I think you are on the right path. You're going to do great things. So,
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on. Again, super well dressed. He's going to come in and knock your socks off in a virtual interview or in the room interview. I'm telling you, this guy's what you're looking for as a hiring manager. Check him out. So, Andrei, with that being said, how can people find you? Where can people reach out to you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I've got my contact information on there. So we'll have that posted with this audio and video for them to check out, and the resume is all there, and feel free to contact me. That's the usual. So that's what I've got as well. So
I've got your generic LinkedIn email address here at the bottom of the screen. It's Andrei. For anybody listening through Anchor or Apple Podcast, it's Andrei is spelled Andrei Wood, Wood. So if you're looking for Andrei on LinkedIn, if anybody's watching on YouTube or Facebook, of course, there's that link at the bottom. It's one of those generic links that has a bunch of numbers and letters in it and stuff like that. But I am sure that if you typed in Andrei Wood's name on LinkedIn, you're going to come across his face, and that'll be a great way to connect with him.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks again, Andrei, for coming on the show. If you liked what you've heard here, give us a like, a rating, review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us. Check us out on all the social media platforms, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all the above. You can check Matt and I out on all those as well. And for that, it's going to end the episode. We'll see you next week right here on Veterans Beyond the Wire.